This feels like one of those conversations that I think could easily be misinterpreted. So hopefully I won't do that, and hopefully it all comes across well. But I want to talk about, in particular, gay couples within comics. And this sprung from I was recently doing the reviews of Young Avengers and talking about Billy and Teddy, who are a gay couple inside that comic. And it works. It worked. Worked for that comic. It feels like a natural gay couple. So, what is it? I was thinking, why did this work? Why did this come across well? And some of the other efforts that have gone in comics feel so clunky. So let's get into that. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. The answer to the question I posed leading into this might be as simply put as better writing. And you can certainly say that and stop there, and maybe that's as far as it needs to go. But I actually think it's a deeper question, or it begs some more evaluation because the concept around diversity in comics is one that seems to have created a lot of angst for people, both in online and social media, with fans, with purchases. You've heard some retailers complain that Marvel pushing too hard in that direction has actually cost them sales and has hurt the industry. Is that true? There's a bunch of nuances, but it's a big theme. It's been a theme now for many years, and this isn't, by the way, just in comics. You have the whole The Last of Us 2 fluff that's going on with those characters, and the idea of and the idea at its surface is relatively simple. The thought is, hey, if we want to increase our audience, if we want to get more people into these games, we're going to have to show more representation to other genders, other sexual preferences, other races, etc. We're going to have more than just like white dudes and girls in these games. That's that we're going to need more. For whatever reason, they don't usually go with age. Do you notice that? Like, nobody's clamoring for like older representation. It's always, whatever. I'm not gonna fight on that hill today. Anyway, but what strikes me is like anything else, you can have it done well, you can have it done poorly. And I think the question, and I think this is a question for every individual. This isn't like a one size fits all. Is poor representation better than no representation? And by that means, if you've got a gay character, but the gay character is written super terrible, like just not, inconsistent. The quality of the writing is bad. The history of the character is unimaginative. Just the whole thing is poor. Is it worth it? Meaning, is it better to have a poorly written gay character in a comic than no gay characters at all? And I think that this is an individual question. For me, I would say no. And I say that because I don't think it's impossible to write good quality gay characters. I think as I said in the Young Avengers video, I think Billy and Teddy it's a relationship. It's a gay couple, 16, 18, depending on what volume of the Young Avengers. Anyway, it works. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel abnormal. It feels like it's a gay couple that you would see out in the real world somewhere. It feels like a good couple. And over in DC, you had Midnighter and Apollo, which also felt, very, very different dynamic there. Certainly older. The whole style of the Authority as a comic was very, very different. But that couple also felt, I use the word normal, and I don't mean it like gay is normal or not normal. I mean the writing. It just feels like, hey, here's some characters. And from at least what I've heard and what I've understood with representation in comics, the value is intended to be, and what we want is that it's written like, hey, you've got two straight couple characters over here, we got two gay characters over here. We're not shining a spotlight on the gay characters, going, look at this, look at this, look at this weird attraction. It's just people. It's just people and couples doing people and couple things, and it's normalized. And by the way, that word tends to trigger a couple people when I say normalize. Like, well, you shouldn't normalize those things. That's your deal to decide, not decide. From the context of writing, I think characters should feel normal. That they and it sounds weird to say that when we're talking about superhero books and people fly into other planets and aliens and all the rest, but it shouldn't feel like a um, a two-dimensional, very poorly written comic. So um, I think that so I've introduced a bunch of things. So let me try and pull it back now a little bit. Um, I think that the idea around representation in comics will bring in new readers. I think is a bit of a fake thing, or at least not a clear business plan. And why I say that is because, typically speaking, if you have a really strong writing, if you have a really good story, that tends to be the number one thing. Think like Family Feud, of like the top things that are going to bring new readers into comics. A great story, a compelling product is number one. And you might say, well, different people have different tastes. So what one person thinks is a great story might not be what other people think is a great story. And I say, okay, that's fair, except, if you look at Heroes Reborn, Avengers, the Rob Liefeld one that he did with Chap Yap, that comic, and you say, okay, we're going to hold this comic in one hand, and in the other hand, we're going to hold up, Dark Knight Returns. Okay, now which one feels like better quality? Okay, now as a reader, you may like one over the other, just a personal preference, but by and large, odds are the Dark Knight Returns is going to be seen as a higher quality book. Another way to put it is like, hey, let's take those. There was an Avengers comic that they made. I didn't wind up reviewing it. That was built to be a kind of a 8-page digital tie-in to the movies, and it was kind of just rolling people out. You compare that comic to, say, the Avengers relaunch with Kirk Busiek and George Perez. Okay, which one is going to be the more quality story? I mean, you can make those judgment calls, even though everybody has their own personal preferences. There are ways that you can make those calls, and so I think that's the best way to get new readers into comics. Now, I'm not denying. In fact, I think there's merit to saying, hey, people want to pick up a comic and be able to see themselves in it. They want to be able to, have those experiences. I don't think it's as all-consuming as, lots of kids, lots of boys in the 80s bought Transformers toys and loved them, and that was a very successful franchise. And at no point did the Transformers ever look or really even behave like them. There were no races in Transformers. I mean, even despite the voice acting they got for the cartoons, it didn't work that way. You just had Transformers, and that seemed to work out just fine. So I don't think it's like if you don't have representation for everyone, you're going to fail. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it's impossible to pull in new people. But at the other hand, I think that there are certain comics, certain stories. I think I mentioned it in the other review. Kieran Gillian's Phonogram did a good job of showing different, kind of representing different people and different things. And it brought new readers who could see themselves in the book. I don't think that's a non-factor. I just don't think it's the most important factor. But it gets back to the question I posed earlier. Just having the representation, I don't think does the job. I think you've got to do it well. And that's where I go back to, if you look at, for example, Sina Grace's Iceman and how it handled that kind of coming out and that character exploring kind of a gay relationship and other things, and you compare it to Kieran Gillian's Young Avengers, which featured a bunch of 18-year-olds kind of figuring out who they were as adults and starting in some of their relationships for the first time. There's a massive difference there in terms of quality. And I think that, and what's peculiar about that is Sina Grace was partly brought into that job and wanted to write that character and was commissioned to write that character because he could authentically relate to the gay experience. And yet, if you read Iceman's coming out versus you read some of the storylines of people coming out in Young Avengers, the Young Avengers story that Kieran Gillian did is far more effective at providing something that feels authentic to a human experience, whereas the Iceman version felt very, very forced. It felt very fake. It did not. It felt like a stereotype of what a coming out. Put it this way: if you just whoever you are were hired, and it's like, okay, you're going to write this sitcom here for Friends, and Joey is going to come out. Now write the episode. You would not I'm making some judgments here, but you might wind up with some very stereotypical sitcom like storyline, and that's what Iceman felt like, which is strange. I think it's legitimately strange. I have met, full disclosure, I've met Cena Grace at conventions. Guy's nice. It's weird because I think people assume he's like in real life snarking around, but he's very, very nice guy. Spent extra time with fans, everything else. I mean, on paper, I think you would go, here's somebody who you could tell this story, but it just didn't come out that way. No pun intended. So I think that there's aspects. I guess I'm arguing a number of different things. First off, I think that anyone who's saying, "Hey, we can't deal with any of these topics in comics," I think is being foolish. I think there's value to doing it. I think that there's any story idea should be possible. I think that the problem is that they need to be able to be done well, and I think we really need to examine people within comics, the editors, the writers, etc. They need to examine, hey, why is it that this one storyline can carry it so well and others cannot? Why is it the authority? And by the way, I had this argument online, and the comment I got back, which somewhat prompted this whole video, was, well, of course, Midnight and Apollo are going to wind up better, and of course, Billy and Teddy and Young Avengers are going to wind up better and be written better because they had more breathing room. They had more issues. They had more pages. They had more ability to tell their story. Iceman didn't have a long run. And okay, except that doesn't really wash, because if you go to Young Avengers #1, which introduces Billy and Teddy, they managed to get the point across that they're in a relationship in like 3 panels, not even pages, panels. And the Young Avengers was not. I think 12 issues was in that whole series. I mean, that's less issues than Iceman Volume 1 and 2 had. Midnight and Apollo, I think, again, relatively quickly. There's now these characters showed up in Stormwatch a little bit, so it's cheating somewhat, but this wasn't a long, drawn out, decompressed storyline of them. They kind of hit the ground running and off they went. So I don't believe, I do believe that the case is you have to, be able to have some plan, and you have to have some time to tell your story. I agree. But I also think, if you'd given Iceman guaranteed 40 issues, I don't know that it would have told the story better than, say, what Young Avengers was able to do with Alan Heinberg in, 2 pages, 3 panels over 2 pages. I don't know. I think that the key always comes down to, like, the too long didn't read version of this whole video is you got to do it well. If you do it well, I think you're adding value. I think that if you are able to tell a good story and you're able to make these characters 3-dimensional and give them life and do it well, I think, yeah, maybe you do bring in some of a new audience. But I think more importantly, the audience you already have gets a pretty interesting gay couple or whatever it happens to be, and it works out. I don't think it's. I think that pretty much values everybody gets some value out of well-written characters, regardless of their race or gender or sexuality. Well-written characters benefit everyone, and so I think that should always be the goal. To look into one more, America Chavez had her limited series by Gabby Rivera, and it felt like that I think that comic had a different problem. I should go up and not review it, but really dissect it a little bit, because unlike Iceman, Gabby Rivera was throwing a ton of different ideas at the page. Iceman had kind of a coming out story with the parents, and kind of Bobby getting moving and getting comfortable with himself and everything else. America Chavez introduced alternate dimensions and like a million things into canon. And that one, it felt like it was a victim of maybe like you take a couple of those elements out. Like the fact that they had America Chavez come from another dimension, another planet, and everything else. I wonder. I would speculate there are people at Marvel who wishes that could just be erased and just she wasn't an alien from another dimension, because it's like we're trying to land her as a powerful character, very smart character, very effective. We're trying to have her be a lesbian character. We want her to represent Latina. So I'd kind of stop there. I'd draw the line and like, okay, we're going to work with this. I would not also introduce, but she comes from an alternate dimension planet of people who are Latina, but they're not because they're aliens. And they've got a matriarchal society. I mean, like, whoa, 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 too much, too much. Like, out of the van. You got too many things going on. Let's just go back to what you have. I think you would be successful because a lot of people forget this. When America Chavez first debuted during Dark Reign, that character was well liked. Like, there was interest in seeing that character more, and even in Young Avengers, that character was like, hey, people like that character. In Ultimates, that people like that character. It wasn't until the actual solo book that it seemed to turn off a decent amount of the audience. That character had some momentum, and I think that was all before the alternate dimension, planetary kind of crazy stuff that now everybody has to slam in and somehow figure out how to work with that. If I was a writer, I'd have I don't know. I mean, this would be a huge retcon kind of thing, but it's like, oh no, she was a sleeper agent for the Masters of Evil or some super villainous team who implanted these fake energies and all these other stuff. She's been living this kind of delusional other reality that doesn't actually exist, and her world is coming crumbling down. Now she's got to find out who she is again, and go back to her core as a hero. Like, I'd be on that story as hard as I could. Anyway, there you go. What do you think? This is like I said, it's an awkward topic because when you go into it, immediately some people are like, "Oh, you don't like gay people?" No. I don't. I had gay people work in my store. I've got friends who are gay. I think no problem at all. Which is maybe a whole, because I have no problem at all. I actually would like them to be represented, actually written well. I think that's the other half of that story. But what do you think? Let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. If you had any of these similar thoughts, if I got it all wrong, I probably do. Please let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.